Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our parents' session, a second session here. I'm Surya Parak, the school counselor based at the school. And as you're aware that our topic today is making your home a sanctuary even in these challenging times. I take this opportunity to welcome the governing board because this program is being live streamed, and to the headmaster, Mr. Ansur, our senior management, parents, colleagues, and our learners. And our guest speaker, I think some parents have already known Mr. Khamissa, who's been so instrumental in the education arena and sector. To give you an introduction on Mr. Edris Khamissa. Mr. Khamissa is an international consultant in education and human development. He began his career as a teacher of English. His passion and expertise for the subject culminated his domination of chairman of English Society of South Africa and has been a head teacher of these schools. He has conducted numerous workshops in over 30 countries, including Australia, United States, Canada, England, Middle East, and I'm not going to go through the entire list. Family dynamics in the 21st century and project management. He promotes excellence wherever he goes. He is an advisory member of the IBA, International Board of Education Research and Resources. He is the co-author of IBA Manual for Schools and a co-author of The Art of Public Speaking, Embrace the Joys of Public Speaking and Premarital Conversations and Beyond. His expertise is a self-development curriculum design. His creativity made him a dynamic lecturer in methodology in the International Peace University of South Africa. He conducts motivation and training for business, corporations. His particular focus is in soft skills. Youth leadership is another area of his focus. He is regular guest at the national and community radio station. His attendees finds his program life-changing, and he believes that he should take ownership of our lives. This is clearly evident in his personal empowerment seminars and workshops. One of the other specialities is motivating and training nursing staff. He also is part of Public Speaking Academy, and one of his unique features is the ability to respond to the diverse needs of our community, and is not only identifies the challenges, but is able to provide solutions, all in his dynamic individual with diverse talents. So we do have a speaker who has a vast knowledge of very, very clear understanding of human behavior, of soft skills, and training persons in various facets of living and life skills and just being able to cope. So our topic is quite apt for welcome, Mr. Khamissa, because the topic is actually quite apt with all the research you have done. And I think we all need the refresher from time to time, as we have been through some very challenging time and is presenting with further challenging times as we in the present as well. So this will be an informative presentation, and I would really want persons to take this message to your other colleagues, and we then can have this really spread as information for our learners as well as parents. So Jazakallah, and hand you over to our very esteemed guest, Mr. Khamissa.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, the Lord of all the worlds, to whom we belong, to whom is our return, and may His choicest blessings go to the highest of Allah's creation, our beloved Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the most generous in companionship, the most gentle in speech, indeed, the most eloquent ambassador to humanity at large. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum. Speak English, yeah? Speak English? Okay. Alhamdulillah. I want to start off by depressing you first. I want to shock you a bit. Then I'll give you solutions. In my humble life, in my interaction with the communities globally, I have concluded that we as a ummah, we are bleeding. We are bleeding. Why do I say that? Did you ever think in your life that in South Africa, there'll be an organization called Ex-Muslim Association? Did you think in your life, young boys and young girls would prefer same-sex attraction than the sacred institution of marriage? I won't go to the details because I deal with that. It is heartbreaking. So, I don't want to share more stories with you, but suffice it to say, psychologists have said, and I want you to repeat this after me. All of you repeat it after me. If I do not change in the next 48 hours, it's unlikely I'm going to change. If I do not change in the next 48 hours, it's unlikely I'm going to change. If I do not change in the next 48 hours, it's unlikely I'm going to change. Now you've got to ask yourself, firstly, why do young boys and girls misbehave? And I also want to make the statement, and I want you to reflect on it, that parenting is not so much your relationship with your child, but it is your relationship with your spouse. Think about that very, very deeply. Parenting is not so much your relationship with your child, but your relationship with your spouse. So as I'm talking to you, I know you may be thinking, how I wish my husband could be here. How I wish my husband could be here. And I want to just share something with you. When you go back home, if you enjoyed my talk, if you didn't, it's okay with me. My self-esteem is intact. When you go back there, tell him, my darling, I'm so glad I went. He taught me a lot about myself. Don't say about him. You got to use wisdom, sisters, wisdom. Now, it's very, very important that we do that. So, a critical thing, children want to grow up in a stable home. Children want to grow up in a home where there's an expression of love. Children want to grow up in a home where there's demonstration of that love. Our Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was very expressive about his love. In fact, I want to write a book, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the romantic prophet. The romantic prophet. You should hug your husband in front of your child. The first thing you do in the morning when you're leaving each other is to hug each other. You come back, you hug each other. You hug your children. Hug your children. That has become so important, especially in today's context, because very importantly, very critically, we are no more living in a extended family. They say it takes a whole village to bring up a child. A whole village. I know I was reminded by one of my friends. He told me, Edris, I don't know if you remember, I come from Port Shepstone. Beautiful town, visit Shepstone. How many of you have been to Port Shepstone? Okay, that's right. Those didn't go, that's why you're looking depressed. Go to Shepstone. So he said to me, in the early days, one day I wore jeans, jeans, Levi's jeans, young man looking cool and all that. How's it? And I went to the mosque to read my salah. And his father reprimanded me. Look at it, for wearing jeans, he reprimanded me. Right? Because they cared, They cared. Today, an uncle can't reprimand his nephew. That's another story. So what do I mean by this love? I'm going to share a few things with you, and I want you to implement it. Right? Raise your hands, those of you hug your spouse before they leave. If you don't, start doing it. Start doing it. There are many stories to be told. Please, many, many stories to be told. In fact, I can predict whether a person will be happily married or not if I ask them about the childhood experiences. Show that love. Now, why am I saying that? When your kids feel loved by you, when they feel connected to you, when you say, you know what, my child, I love you, Fatima, you're going to be a great young lady sometime. Muhammad, I love you, Muhammad. You're going to be a leader sometimes. That talk of yours would lead to a positive self-talk. It will give them self-belief. Because all children require the following A's they require. Right? They require acceptance. They must know mommy and daddy love me. They love me. They have accepted me. They all need appreciation. They all need affection. They all need attention. They all need positive attributes, and they need acknowledgement. All of them. All of them. So it's very, very important that you have that acceptance. Hug them, play with them. Now, let me explain something to you. I'll just share one story with you for you to understand this. Because for me, it's so critical. It is so fundamental. If you go back doing that alone, inshallah. Now, the critical aspect is this. When you love someone and they love you, do you want to break their heart? You don't want to. Sometimes you assume that because I give my children all of these things, that they understand that I love them. In giving our children what we did not have, we forgot to give them what we had. And I want to share with you these two stories. 1 hour is too short for me. I just warm up, man. This is depressing me, but anyway. Right? Two stories. Two. One, please. And you made a promise to me, you're going to go back and do things differently. You made a promise? You made a promise, inshallah. Really, man. Really, really, really. It breaks my heart when I see what is going on. It breaks my heart. The one story is, there was someone phoned me up. He said to me, you know what? I have an issue with my wife. We have an issue. So what's the issue? He says, I'm married to her for 12 years. She has never expressed a love for me. But I can deal with that. But we have a child, 1-year-old child. The child is not experiencing the maternal love. Not experiencing it at all. I asked him, what do you want to do? He says, well, I want to stay in the relationship. So what about your wife? He said, I must speak to her. So when I spoke to her, I asked her, what do you want to do? Well, she said to me, I want to stay in the relationship, except my father said to me, if I don't come home now, I must never come back. This was a recurring problem. I said to her, you stay with your husband. The love doctor is going to help you. Who's the love doctor? Of course, the doctor of love. And my wife also likes it, and I like it. So anyway, I went to the town. I won't mention the town, which part of the world. You're going to start speculating. Our minds, we get, hey, I think, right. Anyway, so you see, there's no coincidence in Islam. So the husband fetched me and then asked him, okay, or he told me of his own volition, asked him, tell me about your wife. Look what he said to me. When my wife was 1 year old, her mother left them. Aha. So I met both of them. Then I said to them, I want them to hold each other's hand because, marriage is contact sport, right? It's contact sport, So I said, hold each other's hand. And I said to her, I want you to imagine that your husband is your mother. Whatever you like to tell her that you will not tell, say it now. And she started, right? It was so cathartic, so emotional. She said to him, "Mummy, Mummy, Allah gave me such a beautiful child. Smiling, innocent, ma. But I do not know how to be a mother to this child. You and Daddy never hugged me when I grew up. I don't know, ma. Why, ma? Why, ma?" She's crying, and the husband is crying. And I was also, I'm an emotional guy, so I was crying also, right? I was happy. Then she said, Allah, ma, Allah gave me such a wonderful husband, so compassionate, so affectionate, but I do not know how to return that love, ma. Why, ma? Because I never saw you and Daddy hugging each other. And then they both got up, asked her, "How do you feel?" She says, "I have closure." And I asked him, "How do you feel?" "Now I understand my wife." From that day onwards, the life changed. You see what I'm saying to you? So your children must see that. Your children must see that affection. Your children must see that connection. You understand? Right, that's one. The second one is this. There is a story of, I'm giving the latter part of the story. It was a tipping point for me when one father says, I was comfortable at home, and my son came after one of those classes in the afternoon by a teacher who was inspired, ironically, because one of his pupils committed suicide, to teach them how to show love. And he said, I was ensconced, I was sitting in my lounge, and my son came to me. He said to me, Daddy, would you please stand up? I was taken aback by his request, but I stood up. He kissed me on both my cheeks, and he said to me, Daddy, I love you. I began to cry. I asked my beloved son, why are you telling me this now? And my son replied, must I tell you when you are dead? Therefore, more roses are given at the time of death than when people are alive. Those roses are roses because of regret. So I hope you got that message. So the first thing I want you to do, and remember this, very, very importantly, when there is an ongoing conflict between a couple, it also conflicts children. And children can also manipulate the situation. Studies have shown that up to, I think, 60% of kids that grow up in a home where there's ongoing conflict, they cry themselves to sleep and say, why was I born in this home? Right? The second thing that I want to recommend very strongly to all of you is to make sure that your children have good friends. Good friends. It is fundamental. Good friends, they are like the extension of the home, the kind of values, right? Now, friendship itself is very, very critical. In fact, you should know all your children's friends. They should be able to come home, isn't it? Right? And make them feel wanted. They too can be like a conscience. They must be children that will also say to your son, hey, that is not allowed. It's unacceptable. Right? Now, but there's another point that is also very important. You know, we speak about loving our kids. We speak about getting to understand them. But the other question is, do we have conversations with them? Do we get to know them? Do they feel free to share one of their concerns? Do they do that? And that's very important. And you know, may Allah grant all our parents the highest status in Jannah. You know, I'll just give an example. When I was younger, I don't regard myself as old. Mr. Ansur and I, we still young, you know. I got my spare body parts in the car there. Anyway. So anyway, and my father was the word they use, a martinet, you know, strict disciplinarian. And so I grew up in that home. But I must tell you, the relationship I had with both of them, your parents can't be your friends, but you can have a friendly relationship with them. There's a difference. I could talk to my father about anything. About anything. I mean anything. And he will not judge me. You understand? We'll talk. We'll phone each other. And my relationship with my father became stronger because I initiated the hugging after the story about the father, you know. I initiated it. To such a point, if someone told me my dad was at a function somewhere, sitting in front, I would walk down there and give him a hug. Give him a hug. I used to do that, right? The third important aspect is this. As a home, you got to have what I believe to have a routine. Now that routine, he says, yes, we have a routine, but did you discuss that routine? Do your children participate in that routine? In that routine, you also have your me time. In that routine, you also have family time. Right? And sitting around the table, having a meal together is such an important time to develop in children social etiquette. It's a time for the man of the house to celebrate even his wife. Statistically, whether we like it or not, Mr. Ansur, women outlive us. You make our life such a misery, we die before you all. Right? Women outlive men. Now, in that home, if the father did not empower the mother, if he did not treat her with respect and with significance, that when you die, it's going to be almost impossible for her, you know, to control, discipline, and have a meaningful relationship with the children. Right? Now, the other important aspect is this, that the routine, as I said, you need to talk about it. The routine could be, they say, a family that eats together, plays together, and prays together, stays together. Now, talking about prayer and all of those things, it is not enough. It is not enough. And I say this also to the teachers of Islamic studies. It is not enough to teach your children the what and how of Islam. Must also teach them the why of Islam. Why you pray. Why you do this. Why. It's a very, very important thing to bear in mind. Right? Now, because when they become part of a plural society, others will be engaging them, asking them, hey, Muhammad, man, I say every time why be like us, we pray once a week, man. You know, why? You know, at least he'll have a way, he'll have the capacity to respond. The other important thing is this, in terms of the routine, it also includes me time. It includes, like as a family, encouraging the habit of reading. Reading is so important, right? It also encourages, perhaps once a week, doing voluntary work and a whole range of things. Okay. And the thing that today, I must tell you, there are two books that one book that I've read already, the other book I'm reading. The one book is called Boys Adrift. Boys Adrift. It's a very powerful book. The second book that I just ordered and I'm reading is called The Boy Crisis. What they have found, because of the kind of foods that we are eating, that boys are becoming emasculated. They're no more people of courage. You know, women are becoming a little more courageous. In fact, the other thing they speak about, which might, if you are interested, therefore Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam also spoke about tayyib, organic food. In fact, in the book Boys Adrift, they said 70% of the fish they caught in the Potomac River, 70% of the male fish, instead of them producing sperms, they produce eggs because of endocrine disruptors. And they also, the book, The Boy Crisis, they say there was a time when a father, potential or prospective father, was asked, your child, you said your wife is expecting, what would you prefer, a boy or a girl? At one time, most people said boys, now they're saying girls. They're saying because your daughter will always be with you. So things have changed. And the point I'm making is this, and I want you to understand the context in which we are living. During this COVID, the flooding, the looting, it has impacted on the personality of people. Extroverts have become introverts. Introverts are not even speaking. At home, our homes have become quiet places. There is knee-jerk reaction. There is no engagement. There is pessimism. There are demands made on the breadwinner. He cannot cope with it. And as a result, people are looking at distractions that are antithetical to Islam. So it's important for empathy. It's important for conversations. It's important to elicit the opinions of your children. And you've got to be guarded. You've got to understand the cell phone is not something innocuous, right? It's not innocuous, right? And you've got to understand that. You've got to understand who they engage with. I remember when we grew up, if I spend a Sunday afternoon at a friend's place, my dad would ask me, he said, Idris, how you spent the afternoon? So I'll say I was at so-and-so's place. My father was happy. He knows the youngster. He knows the family. Today, your daughter could be in the bedroom for 2 hours. She comes down for dinner. And if you had to ask her where you're coming from, she said, but Daddy, I'm coming from my room. But where are you really coming from? Where are you really coming from? And we are living in a global free world, permissive, everything is allowed. It's about entitlement, me, myself, I. Sometimes unwittingly as parents, you might be incubating a monster at home. So it's very, very important to engage with them, to speak to them about sensitive issues, speak to them about the reality on the ground. So you as a parent must become conversant. You must also do research, understand what was impacting on teenagers days gone by is impacting on pre-teens. And you must be sensitive. I'll give you an example, right? I'll just maybe 2 examples. The one example, there was this 10-year-old boy. He was becoming effeminate. He wanted to play with girl toys. And the mother and father were, confused. They had no idea until they sought someone advice. What happened was this, that the second child that they had was born differently able. And as a result, the mother and father were giving that girl child all the attention. You see? So he thought perhaps, subconscious or whatever, that if I want the attention, then I must be a girl, not a boy. So these things are very important. Very, very important. It is very, very critical, right? And also it's very important the way, it's a very critical thing, the way you introduce Allah to these children. The way you introduce Allah and His Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What are you promoting? What are they learning from you? It is not so much who you want your children to be, but do they want to be you? Are you a source of inspiration or a source of embarrassment? And also, when it comes to your children, it's important that you and your husband, you and your spouse must be on the same page. You have to be on the same page. You can have some subtle differences, okay, but your values must be the same. You never undermine each other. It's important. And to talk about it, to have a conversation. It's very, very critical you do that. Yes, there's no harm if you and your spouse disagree, long as you're not disagreeable. You are promoting the institution of marriage. You are saying, you know what, you can disagree, but you don't have to be disagreeable. These are very important things. When you go back, I'm not too sure what your rituals are at home, It's very important that you take conscious steps. Be vigilant. Do not be a remote control parent. Do not assume because your child has got an iPad or is in front of the television, is a babysitter. Today, even cartoons themselves have subtle messages. You got to engage with them. You got to, and especially when they're kids, they're malleable. They're more receptive, and it's important. It's very, very important, the values. What are your values? What kind of son or daughter do you want? Identify maybe 6, 7 attributes. You say, you know what? We'd like our son to be a leader. Or perhaps you say, I would like our son to be a creative person. We like him to be compassionate. Then see how you can deal with this. And this is fundamental that we do that. Very importantly also is when your children do wrong, there has to be accountability and consequences. You cannot ignore that. I'm not saying you must be overly punitive, far from it, but have measures that are in place. That is very, very critical. Now, what I would also recommend, maybe I think I should show you, I've done some slides also, you know. Now, if you look at, I've got here family, like branches on a tree, we all grow in different directions, yet our roots remain as one. That's very important, see. In fact, in many of our homes, there are no roots. The foundation is wrong. The foundation is not strong enough. Therefore, Hazrat Ali, I think, who said, there are 3 stages in a child's development. The first 7 years is bonding. This is the time where the child begins to trust you. The child learns through the eyes, watching you and mimicking your behavior. First 7 years is bonding. From 7 to 14 is a time of instruction, discipline, and learning. And after 14, you become the child's confidant. The child's confidant, right? But it's very important sometimes. The mistakes we make, sometimes we mollycoddle our children, which is completely wrong. Right. This is critical. Respect is very, very critical. You and your spouse especially must be respectful. Because our Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I've come here to perfect morals. Be respectful. In some homes, the profanity finishes me. It's unbelievable. Be respectful. Be respectful. And never say, you know what, I was a respectful young lady until I married my husband. It doesn't work like that. Right? Be respectful. That is very critical. Now, another thing that I want to really focus on is the whole issue of your child's self-esteem. Can anyone tell me what is self-esteem? What do you understand by self-esteem? Yeah, the self-concept, how they see themselves, right? Then how do you develop a child's self-esteem? What do you do? I'll share with you 10 things, but Kiran? Positive affirmation, yes. Children become the attributes you give them. If you tell your son, you're going to be a leader sometime, inshallah, he begins to believe that. What else? What else? Come on. Yes? Okay, there are many things you can do. Remember I shared with you the 6 A's. You need to spend time with them. You need to give them self-belief. You need to hug them. You need to be good to the mother. That also impacts on them. The other one is, besides giving them self-belief, is not only spending time with them, listening with empathy to them. Very important. How you listen to them.
You'll be surprised at a tender age, your whispering and the things that you do with the child, it will have a profound, profound impact. Now, why is self-esteem so important? When children have low self-esteem, they become suspicious. They are insecure. They have a victim mentality. They blame everyone for their circumstances. They'll take no responsibility. If they've got high self-esteem, they are decision makers. They are independent and interdependent. They have generosity of heart. They have self-belief. It's very different. Now, sometimes, leave that part alone, right? There is another issue about instant gratification. When you give children whatever they want, whenever they want, and how much they want, you are incubating a monster, right? You must have come across the story. There are a few tests. It's called the marshmallow test. If you go on YouTube, you'll see the marshmallow test, where the person doing the experiment, he had, I think, 3 to 4 year old children in cubicles, sitting separately. Sometimes 1 or 2 cases, he had the siblings there. He gave them a marshmallow, and he said to them, I'm going out for a little while, and when I come back, if you haven't eaten that marshmallow, I'll give you a bigger marshmallow. And it is quite funny also when you watch those kids playing with it and whatnot. Then what happened was this: a number of kids ate the marshmallow, but some of them did not. Then about 12 to 14 years later, he followed all those children. Guess what he found? He was trying to teach the children delayed gratification. You know what they found? That those kids that ate the marshmallow in that short time, they had problems at school, many of them delinquent behavior, they were erratic in their relationships, and they scored 260 points less in the standardized tests. Those other kids were emotionally more stable, they did far better at school, they did not have issues in terms of relationship. They were self-motivated. You see that? So it's very, very important, right? The other important thing is the whole issue that I want to speak a few minutes about is emotional intelligence. Does anyone know what's emotional intelligence? I don't want you to go to the car park and say, you know, I knew it. What's emotional intelligence? In fact, people are saying today that EQ is worth twice the IQ. Emotional intelligence is a greater predictor of success than a person's IQ. Leaders with EQ are more dynamic than leaders without the EQ. You are not born emotionally intelligent, but you have the capacity. It's learned behavior. Learned behavior. Basically, emotional intelligence is the fact that, you know, we have over 300 emotions. The main emotions, you're either mad, sad, glad, or terrified. At any given time, you're going through some emotion, right? You're going through some emotion. Now, so what happens to you? You are able to regulate your emotion. You say, hey, you know, for example, let us say I'm driving home and some nutcase nearly knocks into me. You know, get mad, you know, so I'm infuriated. So I'm coming to my wife now, right, at home. I need to discuss something. Then I say to myself, you know what? Hey, man, I'm not, you know what I mean? Maybe I need to calm down a bit. You understand? So it's not appropriate. It does not mean you mustn't feel anger. It does not mean you mustn't experience sadness. You experience all those emotions, but you must not act upon those emotions. You do not act upon those emotions. Not only that, the thing about a person with a high EQ, he never suffers or she suffers what you call an emotional meltdown. Like you and a spouse have a little fight, disagreement, say, I don't know why I married you. You know, you realize you got an issue, you're still happily married, but you got an issue you need to sort out. And the thing, if you got a high EQ, you're also socially aware. If I'm speaking to my wife, my darling, my shushababulina doll hazard, so I'm speaking to her and I'm telling her something and I realize, hey, her body language is changing. Maybe my tone is wrong. You know what I mean? You can deflect. And that's an important thing. Our Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had the highest EQ. I'll just share with you 2 or 3 incidents. One incident is about Hazrat Ali, for example. He was rushing for Salah, and in front of him there was an old man. So his Salah got delayed in Medina, I think it was. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked him, what happened? He said, I was rushing for Salah, and there was an old man in front of me. If I rushed past him, I might have made him aware of his fragility and mortality. That's why I slowed down. Just look at that. The other incident, as you know, the time when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was very sad, and he was burying his son, Ibrahim alayhi salam. And the Sahaba were surprised that he was crying, you know. So someone asked him and he said, you know, the eyes weep and the heart grieves, but the tongue will not say anything that is displeasing to Allah. It's also about self-control. The other quick incident, there was an elderly person who gave Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam a bunch of grapes. He was sitting amongst the Sahaba, he took one grape, he ate it, he took the second grape until he finished the whole bunch himself. He's so unlike him. And the man was happy and he went away. So he told the Sahaba, you might have been surprised why I did that. He says, well, when I took the first grape, it was bitter. I was afraid if you ate that grape, you might have shown your displeasure. So EQ is important. And our children need to learn that. Need to know when to speak and when to be quiet. Need to understand that there are times you express your opinions. There are other times you do not express your opinion. That is not only about you, it's about others around you. It teaches them self-discipline. It makes them aware of the environment. They also learn you can disagree, but you're never disagreeable. There is no place for rudeness. And that's a very, very critical thing. You know, I would encourage all of you to learn and to teach. And the best way is look at the example of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? The other important thing that, and I want to stop and I'll entertain some questions, is the fact that what you have is what I call values. As a family, sit down and say, what values do we subscribe to? You could choose. You could say, for example, that we speak politely to each other, right? We listen with empathy. All of us are hospitable to our guests. Stuff like that, that is relevant. Now, the important aspect is this. I don't want you to be naive and think that everything is going well. Because Allah forbid, even your own child might surprise you. Sometimes those thoughts are in the mind, they're incubated, and when they express it, it shocks you. The worst thing for any parent is to have a defiant child. And nothing can be more disturbing when you learn that your son and daughter are doing things antithetical to Islam and they are justifying it. So, if you were to ask me what 5 things you need to do, I would say the following. Number 1, work with your spouse regarding your children. Number 2, you and your spouse need to be expressive of your love for each other. Start off on a new page. Thirdly, connect with your child. Allow them to speak what's in their heart. Fourthly, do not be afraid to have difficult conversations. In one study that was done, they asked 12-year-old, I'm not talking about this was now in the 80s, asked them what topics you like mom and dad to speak about. You know what they said? We like them to speak to us as to why they pray. Why should we pray? We need to speak about same-sex relationships. We also want to know what's happening around the world. And they said if mommy and daddy are going through a conflict, we should be the first ones to know that. So these are the kind of topics. So it's important to ask them that. Very, very important. And I'm saying this to you. Please do it now before it's too late. Because one of the things that I do is to bring families together. You cannot believe how some sons and some daughters, what they say about the father and the mother. I hate him. I despise him. When I grow up, I don't want to be anywhere near like my father. Right? So I'm saying this to you, and also very important, prayer is a very, very powerful thing, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go through this here. You can just you can read it. I'm not going to discuss it, right? Okay. Stop stories. Put the marriage first. Very, very important. Your marriage is very, very critical. A happy marriage also inspires children. Right? Children want to see mom and dad happy. They don't want to see them fighting and all that, right? Okay. Right. In a study that was done in America, they said that families that have even 5 meals a week together, they found children more stable, they were more receptive, and they did well at school, right? You can read that. Family dinners. Yeah, this is a very important thing, right? You know, the question to ask mothers especially, are you a housekeeper or a homemaker? There's a difference. A homemaker has more this nurturing maternal qualities. Am I right or wrong? A housekeeper is concerned about the other aspects, about cleanliness and whatnot, right? Right. And it's good, you know, as a family to have some rituals. You know, you can decide on those rituals, right? Very important. Very, very important. When you get upset, how many of you all do get upset? Put your hands up. You do. When you get upset, do you put a karate outfit and all that? Hey? You do that karate outfit, right? Wait. You know, I was the MC on Sunday at a wedding up north, and the bridegroom, well, he came down with a helicopter, by the way. Yes, love is in the air. So anyway, so he came down, and on bended knee, I didn't, because it was after the nikah. I don't think he asked her, would you marry me? Right? So he gave her the ring. So I said to him, I told my friends that, can you believe it? I had my wife on her knees. He says, your wife on her knees? Impossible. How did that happen? I said, no, I was hiding under the table. She found me. Okay. Right. Yeah. So now, no fight. Right. These are a few points. But what I want to say to you is this, that parenting requires, as I said, all your participation. There has to be love there, right? That you understand. You've got to create in them a love for Islam. You understand, right? Okay, so I'll just take any questions you want to ask. If you're shy to speak about your husband, you must say, I know of someone's husband. If you're shy to speak about your son, it says one son, one neighbor, whatever. Ask, please. I prefer to, I can go on talking.
And my neighbor, sure, keep right. Right? Did you find it beneficial? Okay. Yes. Yeah. Is a place where children must love doing things that are Islamic, like reading Salah and all of those things, right? And, you know, I know there are people who think our kids should not go to university at all. In fact, I must tell you that the home with the cell phone can sometimes be more destructive than going out physically, right? And so I think it's in the end, if it's about your own understanding of your daughter and who her friends are, the kind of guidance you give them, you understand. And if, for example, if you can have a relationship with them when they are open with you. For example, one of the big mistakes we make, I remember a lesson that my metric pupils said they'll never forget some years ago when I spoke about university life, I said to them about boys, what boys would do. I said, they asked me how I know. I said, no, my friends told me. you know how boys will do. So I said to them, and if someone approaches you and whatnot, and you're not inclined towards him, you must tell him, Idris, you know what, you like my brother, the guy will never come back to you, right? And you got to talk about this, because remember, this is important what I'm going to share with you. You cannot insulate or isolate your child, but you can inoculate them. That's important. Sometimes in our busyness, we are doing things for them, but never with them. That even when you drive to school with them, we do not have a conversation with them. We do not talk to them. And I found this. When your children feel truly loved by you, for them to make a drastic step is nearly impossible. Nearly, I'm not saying impossible, nearly impossible. Because they know the impact, you understand, is going to have on you and the family. And also, you see, is about when you as a family love the deen of Islam, you practice it, you are role models for them and others around them, And we are living in very challenging times, right? There was a time, we did not have all these cell phones and computers and WhatsApp and all this stuff, right? So it is a decision that you got to think about carefully, And I really believe if they have the capacity, you should not deny them that, I know there might be flyers coming out, but, Right. Okay, anyone else? Yes. Okay, now let me tell you, the most effective way of dealing with same-sex issues is making sure that you as a wife, as a mother, are playing the role of the mother and wife from the Islamic perspective. And the husband is playing his role. So when they grow up, there's no conflict in their mind. You understand? They see how you operate. And that's a very, very important thing. Very, very critical thing. Now, in terms of conversation, right? They have what you call a chronological age and a psychological age, right? Some kids, some children, maybe age of 10. In fact, now they're showing cartoons about those things in a very subtle way, right? And so you must speak about it in a positive way, because Allah forbid sometimes, when you speak generally to all the kids, you might be creating curiosity also, right? So it's important to talk about marriage, Islam, about haya, all those things, why it is important, and let them follow those aspects. But as they grow older, when they're in the teens and everything else, and you'd be surprised they're aware of it. I know there was this kind of cartoon or whatever,
or the father says the son, he must have gone for a workshop like this. He called his son. He said, "Son, you're becoming a big boy now, and I need to talk to you. We need to have a conversation, about the world." So the young boy asked the daddy, "What do you want to know? What do you want to know?" Because the minds are already, filled with all of those things, and surrender your kids to Allah. You got to connect with them. There are what happens to us, life has become so frenetic. There's so many things happening around us, right? But we must we must make Islam a priority. And I'm not talking about preaching the Islam, is living that Islam also, Right? How many of you are going to do things differently when you go home? Put your hands up. Yeah, right. Right. Maybe you give your husband when he walks, give him a hug, he might die of shock, right? No, besides, no, really, my dua is with you. Because I deal with this and I know the pain that they go through, No, kids, no, parents are different. Yeah, no, really, parents. I've still seen in some homes, up to today, some homes, even though they got about 5 or 6 uncles, the relationship with those uncles, the advice the uncles give them, when they grow up, these young boys and girls want to get married, they go to the uncles for advice. It all depends on you. It all depends on you. And it's not about kids, it's about us. Otherwise, you're going to have a victim mentality, really. I remember, growing up in Poshepson, and so even if in those days, there was a wedding in Durban, my uncle, my aunt, and my father's first cousin, and my father, he was organized. He's saying this car, these people are going to go, that car and whatnot. So, and it is a wedding, they all sit together. I say, but daddy, he says, when you grow up, you'll understand that. And that's missing. You understand? So the important thing is to ask the question, what you want to do differently. So I want to end it off by saying to all of you, Allah bless you for coming here, and share what you thought in your own mind was something useful. The best way of learning is to teach others. And my prayer is, inshallah, that your home is a sanctuary, a place that is safe, where your children feel loved, they're happy to be at home. You understand? And I also pray that your relationship with your spouse is strong, is strengthened, that you all are on the same page. And I want to thank Orient. They're very discerning. They chose me to speak. Alhamdulillah. Shukran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah to all our parents who have attended for the most informative, interactive session. It was actually a link to creating the home life balance that we discussed previously. There are some great take homes that Mr. Khamissa has given us. And inshallah, with all our prayers, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will really assist us in making those changes to create a happy home and learners that are able to be equipped for the life out there. Jazakallah. On behalf of the management, if I can call Mr. Ansur to give Mr. Khamissa a token of appreciation. Jazakallah.